Hello again, this is UML Operator. In this session, we're going to be focusing on the Simulate tab. This is the fifth installment in our understanding of the Sparx tabs and ribbons as we work left to right in the Sparx navigation strategies. All right, as with the development tab, the Simulate tab is an 8 to 12 hour class. So I'm certainly not going to spend that much time. We're going to try to cover this around 30 minutes. So as I step through this, our first group deals with dynamic simulation. As we get this session going, pause and bring up the system help. As I've shown you in the previous, you just go to Sparx, click on Open Help, it'll bring you to the welcome page. You're going to go to Model Simulation right here, and we're going to start with dynamic simulations. And then we're going to go through each one of these. So feel free to go ahead, read ahead as you're going forward. And as with the previous sessions, it's a good idea to launch the EA example. And I'll provide a link to a video I did to show you how to get this into a space where you can work on this project and do your own training. Okay, with the help material that you have up already, let's go ahead and jump into it. So we're in the Simulate tab. We're in the dynamic simulation group, and we're going to start with the simulator. We're going to hit the down caret, and we're going to look at the items available. So you can open the simulation window. You can find simulations, recent state machines, activity graphs, and do other things. Of course, there's help for you that'll drill down to a specific area of this subject. So what we're going to do is we're going to open the simulation window. So as soon as I select that, it is in the right side for me. This may be anywhere for you. So when you launch it, it could be floating in the middle. It could be depending on how you've configured your workspace, it may be different places. All right. I happen to have a workspace that's configured for simulation, and I'm going to launch that now. So if I go to our quick access, I have a workspace. I'm going to select it. It's already configured. That puts the simulation window in between the browser and my work area. And then we'll talk about simulation events window in just a moment. All right, don't panic. I'll be covering configuring your workspace in a couple of sessions. So you can look back at the playlist and follow along there, configure workspace, or let's just keep going. All right. So here we're in the EA example. You can see up here at the top which project is loaded. And I'm going to go to pan and zoom, try to make things fit a little bit better so we can get into this to the simulation tab. So it's right here. This is the navigation panel they provide. I'm going to go ahead and select it. So when I select it, we go into, let me zoom out a little bit here. We go into a lot of examples they give you for doing simulation. But a fast way when you're in this to find the simulations is find simulations. Now, this project has a lot of, not going to put a search term. You can look for various simulations. This is a pretty big project, so it's got a lot of examples that are in here. Let's just go ahead and do the login. I think I'm going to choose this one here. So here we have a state machine diagram, very simple one for login. And we're going to come back to this in a moment, but we're able to actually start and run the simulation here, and it's stepping through the events and letting you know what's going on within the events. And there's certainly a lot more to talk about. This is a very simple state machine diagram. Doesn't have a lot of simulation events. When you get into more complicated ones, which we'll do in a more advanced session, we'll get into simulation events, using inspector, traceability, and a lot more. All right, we're going to go back to the dynamic simulation group, and we're going to select events. So when I select events, it's launching this window, which is simulation events. Let me go back to my common workspace layout, and I'm going to click it again. So as soon as I select it, simulation events popped over on the right side in this workspace. All right, so you can set this anywhere you want. You can put it at the top, you can put it at the bottom. I like to have it over on the right side, so it'll pop up for you. And we're going to get into these events. There's no events right now for us to look at, but when we get into this subject a little bit deeper, this window will make a lot more sense. You know, I went over that too fast. Let's, for now, since you've got e-example, let's go back to simulation. Let's pick a state machine model. I am going to go something a little more complicated, and that's the music player. So I'm going to launch player state. You know, it talks about this particular model. You can read ahead, zoom out a little bit so we can see this in action. And let me go to my simulation layout so that everything is set for this conversation. Zoom out a little bit more. You don't need to look at the model that close, right? All right, so I got simulation and simulation events. We have an initial event. We're going to go ahead and start this one. So as soon as I select start, you can see it's lighting up and it's stepping through and simulating the events. You can, here's a simulation event where we have a waiting trigger, power on. So let's power on our music player. So I select it. You can see it's going through the flow. I can turn it off, play a song, playlist, you know, setup, repeat. You know, right now it's in no repeat. Let's go ahead and step into repeat all, step into just repeat the track, and so on. So you can step through and simulate your state machine very powerfully in Sparx Enterprise Architect. But we'll get into this more. You have e-example up, play around, have some fun with some of the examples they provide for you. All right, I'm going to stop the simulation and we're going to jump back over to dynamic simulation. So there's various windows for managing breakpoints. As soon as I brought that up, breakpoints and markers is over on the right. When we get into more advanced sessions, we'll cover this as we build real state machine models together. Local variables window pops up for me in the upper right. I like to have it to the right of inspector. The call stack, I like to have that to the right of local variables. So you have all of these windows will make more sense as you start building and running simulated models. Next, we're going to jump over to executable states. As Sparx tells you in help, executable state machines provides a means of rapidly generating, executing, and simulating complex state models. And it also tells you that in contrast to the dynamic simulation of state charts using Enterprise Architect simulation engine, executable state machines provides a complete language-specific implementation that can form a behavioral engine for multiple software products on multiple platforms. And if you play around with this, you'll be able to see how they do that between multiple state machines and platforms. Okay, let's move on to decision analysis group and open up DMN, decision modeling notation. Let's open the DMN simulation. You can see this window popped up for me over on the right. Has 3 tabs in it: generate model, test model. So you've got some things to play around here. Each one of these Sparx includes find a search capability. So let's look in the e-example project. We're just going to select this. What I'm going to do is right click on this and I'm going to close all except this, clean up things a little bit. And let's just go to the first one. So you can right click on this and you can find in browser. You can right click on this and find in diagrams. And there's lots of ways to get to the subject areas you're going through e-example project. And some, jumping ahead and doing some self-learning. But we'll get into each one of these subjects in details with some real projects that we'll demonstrate. So in this particular model, we're able to start and run the decision engine model, if you will. You can pick particular artifacts. Started at decision 1. Let's just go ahead and run this artifact simulation. So it's going through here. You're able to step through. So I'm going to step run the target decision. You can see it's going through, and you can just keep going through the decision model. But we'll get into this more. I'm already starting to run a little longer than I wanted to. This requires a session to get into, but I'm going to go ahead and stop the simulation. But you can go through it. It'll run decisions for you and provide you with some outcomes based off of the rules you've set and so on. So decision engine in the old days was called a constraint engine. In the machine learning AI days, we just call it a decision engine. Rules engines are part of decision engines. So we'll get into rules engines, we'll get into rules and all that fun stuff in a later session. Let's go ahead and close this model. No, I don't want to save anything. No, I don't need that. I want to clear results, and we'll keep this up here. And I don't need the DMN expression, DMN simulation, don't need system out or scripting. We're going to jump right now into business process simulation. So just as with the other ones, you have the ability within the e-example model or any project to be able to find things that Sparx has done. You can see they give you a plethora of examples here. Let's just go to the first one on here. And I'm going to go ahead and hit Alt-G, find it in the project browser. We can go ahead and launch the diagram relevant to this particular namespace. And there we go. And you can see there's multiple business process simulations they've configured here. So we're able to, just as with everything else, we can start the simulations. This is BPM. And you can see what popped up over here was the BPSIM configuration. You have configuration, execute, step, and review. So I'm not going to go through the BPSIM rather, but we'll talk about that later as we get into this specific subject around this group process analysis. Very powerful. We're going to jump right now into system behavior group. All right, I'm going to jump back over to my other workspace configuration common, get rid of some things, clean this up. And we're going to go now into the system behavior group. So let me go ahead and close this, and we're back to the beginning. So just relaunch e-example. There we go. All right, so in system behavior, again, you have find, sysml, simulator configuration artifacts. We're going to launch the sysml sim. We're going to have a whole video on sysml, very powerful again, very useful in engineering, especially system engineering as a system architect. So this is the sysml simulator. So you can come in here and you configure, but let's go to find and let's here. There was one I love to play around with. Let's just do the first one, get hung up on things. So sample time, sysml artifact, you can double click here and you can find the element that you click on within your diagram instantly. I'm going to go ahead and launch it. You can see in the configure sysml simulator, it loaded that artifact. So play around, step through this. There's lots of artifacts for you to play around with, but I'll let you do that at your leisure. We'll get into a more detailed session on each one of these groups, this tooling as we move forward. So again, you can apply perspectives, workspace, we'll dive down into that. And as usual, you can select and access the help in Sparx to provide you some online directions, all right? So we're going to move on to, I'm gonna close this, close that, and we're going to move on to console. Now, I first want to note that MATLAB and Octave are not available in the professional Sparx edition. They're only available since version 15, I think it was, from corporate on up, Unified, of course, Ultimate. right? So I just want to make sure I state that. So basically in console, you can launch as many JavaScript consoles you want. I keep clicking on this and bring them up. I'm going to go ahead and close these. And you have the ability to execute MATLAB, and you have the ability to execute Octave. Now I don't have it configured, so I'm getting these errors here, but we'll step into this in a later session. Not sure when I need to get into this, but we'll set that up at that particular time. Now, before I move on, I know I'm going to get hammered in the comments section. What the heck is MATLAB? So MATLAB is a proprietary multi-paradigm programming language. And really the heart of this is a matrix-based language allowing for the use of natural expression of computational mathematics. I just want to put it that way. As far as Octave goes, named after, it's an open source, GNU open source, high-level programming language by one of my favorite professors who passed away in 2017. Octave Lebensfield. It is basically the open source version of MATLAB. I'm just going to state that. And it helps solve linear and nonlinear problems numerically. And numerical expressions using languages that mostly are compatible with MATLAB, but I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't use either. I program in Python and R language. And so when we get to this subject and I want to cover it, I'll get into more details there. All right. So I'll leave it at that and let comments go as they're going to go. Okay. We're going to move into Run Simulation Group next. So this, I played around with it through this session, so don't need to explain. And if you're a developer, you understand step over, step in, step out, you're debugging code. So they give you the simulator here. You notice throughout the session, they give the ability to do a lot of the start, stop, step in, step out, even pause within the tooling that we showed during this session. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. It should be self-explanatory, especially for developers, software developers, system developers. So we're going to just go ahead and start the recap now. And I think that's all I wanted to cover in this tab. Yeah, check. Yeah, that's it. So let's recap. I will leave chapters down below in the description, but during the session for the Simulate tab and ribbon, we stepped through the Dynamic Simulation Group panel, and we opened each one of the windows in each one of these groups. Most importantly, when you're playing around, it'd be good to stay within the EA example project, as I've talked about several times. You can use the find things as we're moving through these groups. Find, and get to the examples and play around for yourself, all right? And we'll get into sessions. This is a more advanced subject area, so it's going to be much later within the series that I get to those, okay? So we went through breakpoint, local variables, call stack, event windows. We moved into the state machine. We moved through the particular windows and tooling they give you there. A decision modeling notation. We went through this group. We opened the simulation. We played around there. We went into the business process simulation, BPSIM. We went through that. We opened up the window that they provide for you. And again, you can put these windows, anywhere you want when you're configuring your workspace. And again, I provided a link earlier to that video. I'll put it up above again right now. And you can configure the workspace to work best for you. We pretty much skipped over console. I might cover this in a later session. I'm not sure. I really don't use MATLAB or Octave. So we talked about that. All right. So I hope this was beneficial for you. Simulation is extremely powerful in Sparx Enterprise Architect. Really no other tooling. Later on, I'll get into sessions around TOIL and common workflow language and tooling we use in data science and machine learning. But Sparx is extremely powerful, and we'll actually do some ML/AI modeling within Sparx and have some fun there as well. So looking forward to talking to you all later. The next session is going to be on the Execute tab. Again, a developer topic. You can see you've got run, you've got the ability to do the things that we do in development. So this will be a very quick video session because I really want to get through these next two tabs. This is construct. This one I'm probably going to spend a lot of time on. This is where I spend in project management and delivery. So I can't wait to get to this section. Specialize, we're going to go through this one very quickly. And then we're going to spend a lot of time on publish. So settings is more advanced, and I'll have a session on that as well. All right. Way too long here, but I said I was going to be 30 minutes and I'm under that. So you could skip over this if you want to. All right. Talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.